delve deeper today in terms of what Scrum really delivers and the features. We've had a look at it yesterday. I was talking about the importance of focusing on the business priorities, why we need to time box. We need to actually have a limit in terms of how much of work can be done in that sense of duration. So we need to time box, and that's why we call those as sprints in Scrum, and we deliver after a few sprints. And then we really have the sense of how we could have reduce the organizational overheads. We don't have very many people, too many layers of hierarchy, because the team is self-organized, it's self-motivated, and it can actually, the team themselves could actually sort out their priorities, they estimate, they commit, and they deliver. So that's the reason why Scrum has been very popular as well. And then we also look at some of the iterative aspects of how we can deliver Scrum in a series of iterations. It's not just deliver once big bang. It's actually you deliver in multiple phases, and each phase would actually contribute to the product getting bigger, better, and more enhancements, more customer and user experience features, aspects, and that would make it really better and better over a period of time. We'll talk about each of these in the next few slides anyway, in terms of the actual artifacts and the activities that we do. So in terms of the development process, we understand that there's a product backlog, right? So we've had a look at the product backlog in the last few weeks of our interactions. We've talked about the backlog. We talked about how the items, so they're not user stories alone in the backlog, right? So we're talking about user stories. There would be tasks, technical tasks, project-related tasks. There would be something to do with for example, the changes or improvements of the existing features. There could be performance-related stuff that you would like to do with the product. And also anything that is a defect or a bug or an issue, all of those would be part of the backlog. That's why Scrum doesn't refer to them as user stories. Yesterday we were discussing, I think Kiran was asking about whether user stories is actually a Scrum artifact. It is a Scrum artifact, but it is not a Scrum technique. It was adopted into a Scrum as one of the best practices to define and manage the requirements and maintain the requirements. So that's why Scrum doesn't call user stories as a part of the Scrum artifact. Basically, they call this as product backlog or sprint backlog. And then the item within that, that's why they call it as PBI, product backlog item, SBI, sprint backlog item. So that item could be user story, it could be a task, it could be change, it could be a defect, all of those, right? So, and then that goes on sprint backlog. They work for about here they said, just an example I've taken is 30-day, but it could be like 2 weeks, it could be 3 weeks, depending on the sprint longevity, the duration of the sprint that is agreed upon. And then once we get that after the end of the sprint, it's potentially shippable. It's in a good position for us to deliver, but we will not be, it is not necessary that you deliver something at the end of the sprint. Maybe after about 2 to 3 sprints, we could combine all of that into one release, and then we deliver that. That's why it is called a product increment. That's what Scrum calls it as, which is basically a release. Again, going back to the release concept that we discussed the other day, releases could be minor release, major release, and things like that. Depending on your product roadmap strategy, you could decide this. So we're going to have an example of this. I'm going to actually explain this with an example so you can relate it to it better. Our website, e-commerce website example. And as we discussed, these are the different Scrum roles, mainly 3 roles, but then you've got users. They're not really role, basically. They're describing that you need to engage the users, the customers, show the product to them. And the stakeholders are basically management, the customer team, the vendors, and all of those could be the stakeholders. So essentially, this is basically what Scrum approach really works.